It is a true delight to come back from vacation to a daily fantasy baseball slate that is loaded with a lot of high upside pitchers for tonight. Just an 8-game slate on FanDuel, but still a lot of guys who can rack up strikeouts. And I think a couple different ways you could play things, despite the fact that you have Spencer Strider available for tonight. We're going to break down what to do with Strider, other guys who could contend for that throne, and much more to get you ready for tonight's slate in daily fantasy baseball. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network. I am Jim Sonis, digital media managing editor for FanDuel Research, here to break down tonight's 8-game main slate with lock set for 7:05 p.m. Eastern for today. Want to give a big thank you to Tom Vecchio for filling in for me this past week while I was in the Dominican Republic. Thank you, Tom, for filling in both in the solo shot and uncovering the spread as well. Please follow Tom on Twitter at DFS_Tom if you have not already. Thank him for filling in for me there. There is a good chance of rain tonight in Pittsburgh for the Pirates and the Braves, though looking like it may be drizzle right now, which is a good thing. They may be able to play through that. And I think as of right now, they'll be able to get that game in. Cleveland also looks a bit dicey, but again, drizzle there too. So I checked back for the Blue Jays and Guardians, but I'd assume right now they're okay to play. And finally, the last trouble spot is in New York for the Mets and the Cubs. Once again, rain seems pretty light, so I think they'll be able to play there. So there are some weather spots for tonight's spots you want to check back on later, but if I had to guess right now, I would assume all those games do wind up being played, whether it be with delays or not. We'll break down what that means, which guys we want to focus on for tonight here in just 1 second. But first, a reminder to make sure you're subscribed to the Number Fire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. We are now a month away, roughly, from NFL being back for the Heat Check. No preseason podcast, but back with you for the regular season, which is now just around the corner. And those podcasts will be up both on the Number Fire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed and the FanDuel YouTube page and FanDuel TV Plus, along with the solo shot. We are back on the FanDuel YouTube page and on FanDuel TV Plus for this week with me being back in the saddle. So make sure you check out the FanDuel YouTube page, FanDuel TV Plus, and the Number Fire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed to get all these shows as they are posted. Have you ever started a player in your fantasy lineup who scored 3 points while someone on the bench puts up 20? Well, with FanDuel's NFL best ball drafts, you don't have to worry about that. Draft your team, and each week, the highest scoring lineup from your roster will be used as you battle for first place all season long. Leagues can be free to play or for money and range from 3 to 12 players. The NFL season will be here before you know it. So head over to FanDuel today to get in on the action. Pitching preview for this Monday main slate, Spencer Strider checks in with the highest salary on FanDuel. His salary is $11,500. $11,500, well worth it. Garrett Cole is $11,000 flat. Freddie Peralta checks in at $10,500 with Logan Webb at $10,000. Kodai Senga facing the Cubs at $98,000 with Dylan Cease at $9,000. We have Brian Bayo, Patrick Sandoval, Dane Dunning, and Drew Smiley as the others at $8,000 or higher. Now, he's Spencer Strider on the road tonight, and he's facing the Pirates, and that's a pretty solid matchup. So even with Garrett Cole, Freddie Peralta, Logan Webb, Kodai Senga, Dylan Cease, all these guys who can rack up strikeouts, I'm going to put Strider 1. I will say it's not as fervent. I'm not as fervent in that as I typically am with Strider, but I do think he is still number 1. Let's talk about why Strider's number 1 and then talk about why potentially some other guys could at least give him a run for his money. The Pirates, not a bad WRC plus against righties at 102, but they do strike out with a 24% strikeout rate against righties on the current active roster. So that's a plus for him. They will strike out. But Strider doesn't really need that bump, honestly. He hasn't been as dominant recently as he was to open this year, but Strider is still pitching really well. We have a 14-start sample on Strider since he started to mix in his changeup more often. And in that time, he has a 2.69 skill interactive ERA with a 37% strikeout rate. Those are very good numbers. But I think that what's equally impressive to me, maybe not equally, but like low-key impressive, under the radar impressive, is that Strider's allowing just a 34% hard hit rate. That leads me to think that his 4.23 ERA in this time is more so the product of bad luck than anything else. Like, sure, he makes some mistakes that get punished, and that's why his ERA will likely always be higher than his skill interactive ERA, but, you know, with him being in a park tonight that's not as penal to fly ball pitchers, I think that he could be intriguing here. 11.5 is definitely a large salary, but Strider, very worth it. I've got him projected for 9.4 strikeouts. That is the highest number on the slate, and I'm very comfortable putting Strider there myself as well. So even with not ideal situations against a middling offense on the road, I still think Spencer Strider is number one. Among the non-Strider options for tonight, I wouldn't always rank Freddie Peralta above Garrett Cole because Cole's in a very good matchup. But Peralta trending up right now, and he's facing the Rockies in Milwaukee. And I feel like that's enough to give Peralta a slight edge over Garrett Cole on this specific slate. Peralta's facing the Rockies, and things are pretty rough for them. They have an 81 WRC plus against righties in the current active roster with a 26% strikeout rate, and their power numbers are not good, even though those are not adjusted for the fact they play half their games at Coors Field. So when you get a pitcher facing the Rockies when they're on the road, it's a really big boost for that pitcher. And Peralta has been pitching a lot better recently. Over his past 10 starts, Peralta has been throwing fewer curveballs. He has a 35% strikeout rate in that time with a 3.18 skill interactive ERA. Now, similar to Strider, his results have not always been great because Peralta's ERA is 4.28, and I think it's actually more explainable for Peralta because his batted ball numbers are actually rougher than Strider's. So that's a concern, but it's less of a concern when you're facing the Rockies on the opposing side. The other downside for Peralta relative to Cole, relative to Strider, is that he doesn't go as deep in games. Across this 10-start sample, Peralta has not gone longer than 6 innings, and he's gotten just 4 starts with a quality start bonus on FanDuel. So there are downsides, and those are very important. And that may be enough to rank Peralta below Garrett Cole tonight. But with this matchup, I do like Peralta quite a bit, and I think that you can at least consider him above Garrett Cole. And I think that like there's a situation where Peralta winds up being the highest score tonight above even Spencer Strider. You need Strider to slip a bit because Strider and Cole do go deeper in games, but Peralta can rack up points despite the fact he does not go deep. So especially in this matchup, I think that Freddie Peralta at 10.5, well worth considering even on a slate with a lot of really impressive pitchers across it. I think you could defend either Brian Bayo or Dylan Cease as your top value play for tonight. Bayo gets the Royals at home. Cease gets the Yankees also at home. I'd rather shoot for the ceiling, which leads me to Cease. But Bayo, if you're looking for the higher floor option, is the better option between the two in that regard. That's just not really the way I play things when it comes to DFS. As mentioned, Cease is facing the Yankees. They do have Aaron Judge back, but it's a big boost to this offense. But even with Judge back in the fold, this is still not among the league's best offenses. With Aaron Judge on the active roster, the Yankees have a 98 WRC plus against righties. They have okay plate discipline numbers. So they're not a team we need to cross off opposing pitchers against just because Aaron Judge is back. It does hurt for sure, but it's not a cross-off situation. Cease is really inconsistent. He can have great starts and he can have clunkers. Last time out was a clunker. He let up 7 earned runs, didn't even finish 2 innings. But 2 starts before that, he had 9 strikeouts in 6 innings with 1 earned run allowed. We do have a couple of starts for Cease since June where he had double-digit strikeouts. So again, similar to Peralta, there is a world in which Dylan Cease winds up being the highest scoring guy in tonight's slate, but he also could bomb. I'm okay with that personally. I'm okay with that range of outcomes because I want to focus on the ceiling and try to gun for first place in daily fantasy. And I think that Cease is the guy more capable of getting me that. I had Cease projected for 6.4 strikeouts. Bayo is at 5.0, so a 1.4 strikeout difference. Bayo does have the better matchup, but I will take Cease for the ceiling here just because that's the way I want to play things. I want to shoot for first place. I think that Cease is more likely to get me there than Bayo. So even though the downsides are higher with Cease, I still think he is a better play for daily fantasy if you are in fact gunning for first place in the leaderboard, which, spoiler alert, you probably should be. So again, top pitchers for today are going to be Strider 1, Peralta 2, Cole 3. We'll talk about him and things to watch. And then I'll go Cease over Bayo by a hair among the value plays at $9,000 or lower. Let's talk now about some stacks. And for tonight, we got Ken Waldichuk starting for the A's tonight. And they're in Oakland. So the fact that it's a non-elite matchup or, a non-elite pitcher in Oakland against a very bad bullpen might not always matter because it's super cold in Oakland and that hurts park factor, hurts offense. But on tonight's slate, there aren't as many warm games as there have been throughout the entirety of July. And those games that are warm have some slight rain concerns. So at least a little bit of risk there. And I think that gives us more leeway to stack offenses in Oakland if we like them. Well, tonight we get a team in Oakland that's facing a lefty in the Rangers, and the Rangers crush lefties. And Ken Waldichuk is a guy we can stack against. So the Rangers, to me, are going to be the top stack, despite the fact they are in Oakland for tonight. The Rangers have a 129 WRC plus against lefties in the current active roster with a 39% fly ball rate and a 191 ISO. Those numbers, I believe, still have Josh Young on there, and he will not play tonight, obviously, given his injury. So downgrade that a bit with Young being taken off the active roster, but they're still going to be a very good offense in their current state, even without Josh Young. Waldichuk does get strikeouts, which could be a concern for stacking because it's fewer balls in play. Looking at Waldichuk, the velocity on his slider increased across his past 13 starts. That's up from where it was previously. And in that 13 start sample, he has a 24% strikeout, which is pretty good. But he also has a 13% walk rate. His hard hit rate allowed is 45%, and he lets up plenty of fly balls. So when Waldichuk does not get his strikeout, bad things are typically happening against him. That's why his ERA in this time is 5.26. So it's a great matchup for the Rangers. It's a great offense. The lone downside is weather, and again, it's not as big of a negative as it typically would be, which puts me on the Rangers here as a great stack for tonight. Now, with Young being taken out of the lineup, we'll see some of the value plays in this Rangers team being shifted up in the order. That means Mitch Garver moved up, Robbie Grossman maybe moved up, and Ezekiel Duran maybe moved up. And we've talked a lot about Duran this year. He's been a great value part of this offense. He's been a guy I've used for stacks, even when he's been batting lower in the order. But Duran has had his performance slip a bit recently, and it's led to a decrease in his playing time, at least against righties. And the batted ball data recently not as good for him either. Striking out a bit more. Did hit a home run last night, so that's been good. So I've been on Duran all year long, and I've been very okay with that. I've probably had him as my favorite among the value plays on this Rangers team. I think I'm okay kind of changing that stance now, though, given how long this semi-slump for Duran has been. So to me, among the value plays, I know they'll all move up here. I think I'm going to go Mitch Garver 1. I might actually go Robbie Grossman 2 above Duran, assuming they're both in the lineup. And that's a very weird thing for me. I'm still receptive to Duran because, again, he's $2,900 and a good offense, so we want to stack. He's shown at times this year he can crush the ball and be a great DFS play, but I'm just a bit lower on him now than I was before, and I'm going to rank him third among the value plays, assuming both Garver and Grossman also do play for tonight. For our number 2 stack, let's talk about the Brewers facing Peter Lambert, who's done some things pretty well, transitioning to being a starter. So I don't adore this stack by any means, and I think there are some teams we'll talk about and things to watch you could put above them. But with the way things look right now, I do think the Brewers are in play for tonight. Lambert has made 4 starts so far this year, and the results in that time, very good. And they're good because he has done a great job of suppressing hard contact, and that can be a skill. But the problem is, it's not a skill that Lambert flashed when he was in the bullpen, because his hard hit rate for this year is 44%. So if you told me that Lambert would maintain what he has done early in the rotation, I would not stack here because his batted ball numbers are very good and that can be sustainable. I just don't know if that'll be the case based on what he did prior to becoming a starter. If you look at the larger sample on Lambert, he is a low strikeout guy, lets up fly balls, lets up hard contact, and that's the recipe for stacking even outside of Coors Field. So the Brewers, not a great offense, but I do think they're good enough to be viable if the weather, were to impact some of the other options on this slate. And again, there are some other options you could turn to, but the Brewers, to me, very much in play and a team I'm willing to stack. Sal Frelick has been the big talk here for the Brewers for good reason, but Carlos Santana has also been a bit of a surprise, at least to me. Maybe I just hadn't been hip to how well he was playing this year, but Santana does have a 193 ISO against righties for the season, which is a very good number. And his batted ball data has improved since the All-Star break. And we also saw Santana swipe in some bags earlier on this year, which is a fun sight. So this offense slowly becoming a bit more fun than it was earlier on this year. Adding Frelick in there, adding Santana in there, adding Christian Yelich, getting back to kind of what he was before. I think that's all a big positive. So the Brewers, despite being not a world beater by any means, still a team I am okay stacking for tonight. For the third stack, let's talk here about the Boston Red Sox facing Cole Ragans, whose first 2 starts for the Royals have been awesome. He's gone 11 total innings. He has 11 strikeouts with only one earned run allowed. And one of those starts came against the Tampa Bay Rays. So that's all awesome, but I'm not quite sure if it'll stick yet, which is why I'm looking to stack the Red Sox against him. Ragans is with a new team, which could mean that, new pitching staff, new set of eyes could have unlocked something with him here. But the numbers for Ragans as a reliever with Texas were just fine. He has a 4.33 ERA this year. He's walking a lot of guys, not getting enough ground balls. Since joining the Royals, he has made 6 starts with 2 in the majors and 4 in AAA. If you look at the 4 in AAA, his ERA is 4.82. If those games had come in the majors, I don't think we'd be avoiding stacking against him for it. He just happened to have his really good starts in the majors, which we should put more weight on because it's a better competition, better gauge, but I'm not sure it's sustainable just yet. Ragans walks a lot of guys, even with the strikeouts. I think we should get base runners in this game. The Red Sox active roster has a 117 WRC plus against lefties, so I'm down to get in on them here. I think that they do make a lot of sense, and I think the Red Sox are a viable third stacking option behind the Brewers and the Rangers for tonight. The Red Sox added Luis Urias near the deadline, and Urias has had a really rough year, but his batted ball data honestly is not that much worse than what it was last year or the year before. He did hit for power against lefties back in 2021. He puts the ball in the air, and I still believe in the talent that Luis Urias has, despite the fact we haven't seen it so far this year. I think he can be viable for DFS when they're facing lefties, which they are for tonight. So I'm willing to turn to Urias tonight at $2,300 if I need some wiggle room to get to Spencer Strider, Freddie Peralta, guys like that. And I will need that option. Even though the Rangers have some value plays, I think that a guy like Urias can really make that a lot easier. So Luis Urias, a value play, I believe in tonight at $2,300. Let's go down to things to watch where I did want to touch briefly on Garrett Cole. Obviously, his matchup is nearly as good as Peralta's. The White Sox WRC plus against righties down to 87 now, and they don't draw walks. So I have Cole projected for 7.0 strikeouts tonight, which is lower than Peralta, but not super far off. So I don't blame you if you want to go Cole. I think that that is very defensible given the state of the White Sox roster, but I'd just have a slight lean toward Peralta personally for tonight. I think the Braves offense is also pretty interesting. They're facing Osvaldo Bido, who has done a good job of keeping hard contact in check so far. Still has not had the best results despite that, though. His expected ERA is 4.66. The Braves have a 121 WRC plus against righties with a 225 ISO, so maybe they should be higher on this list. I think you could definitely put the Braves as high as second on this list, but I can't put them any lower. I know that for sure. So the Braves, somewhere between second and fourth for stacking. I'd probably put them fourth, I guess, for now, but, if you want to put them second, no pushback from me. They're all in the same tier. Mets are facing Drew Smyly. The offense has been bad against lefties with an 87 WRC plus, but Smyly scuffling right now, trying to cling to that spot in the rotation. I think that the Mets are in play despite their poor results against lefties, but I want to rank them below the Braves. To me, the Braves, the Brewers, and the Red Sox are all in one tier, and then the Mets are a tier below that as far as stacking for tonight, with the Rangers above all of them as being my favorite option. Let's finish up here with some dinger calls for today. The boring one, it's actually on the Mets. I don't want to stack them because their overall team is not great against lefties, but Pete Alonso is, and Pete Alonso seems to be getting back to what he was doing before. So we'll make Pete Alonso the boring home run call for today, facing Drew Smyly with all the fly balls and hard contact he allows. The fun one, I want Mitch Garver. Garver should be in there despite being a catcher because it's a lefty. They'll DH him at times, especially with Young being out. I think that, they're going to want Garver's big bat in the lineup. I think that it makes a lot of sense. I did consider Robbie Grossman briefly here. Couldn't quite talk myself into it, but if you want like a super exotic home run call, Robbie Grossman would probably be that guy, but I'm not quite that outrageous. We'll go with Mitch Garver as a fun one with Pete Alonso as a boring one for tonight. That is all that we have here for today on the Solo Shot. As a reminder, once again, make sure you're subscribed here to the Number Fire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed for MLB, UFC for select events, PGA for the rest of the FedEx Cup playoffs, and also we'll have NFL just around the corner, all right here in the same feed. Solo Shot and Heat Check for NFL also going up on the FanDuel YouTube page and on FanDuel TV Plus. If you've got any questions for me, I am on Twitter at JimSannes, JimSannes. You can also follow FanDuel Research at FanDuel Research. I want to thank you all for tuning in for today. Good luck to you with your MLB DFS lineups for tonight. We'll talk to y'all once again tomorrow to break down a big old Tuesday slate. This has been the Solo Shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.